Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we take your sources, really dig in, and pull out the insights that matter, cutting through all the noise. Today, we are plunging into some really fascinating material, all grappling with something we all face: ethical dilemmas. But this isn't just abstract right versus wrong. Our sources, they really push us to think about how our own relationships, our circumstances, how they can completely shift how we see a moral choice.
That's exactly right. We'll be looking at detailed analyses of ethical situations, including a pretty unique view on how AI actually tackles these complex questions. And then we'll see what happens when you add layers of personal connection, like, family, and how that changes everything.
Yeah, our mission today is really to show you how these different angles, especially the personal ones, can turn what looks like a straightforward ethical problem into something intensely real, a very sticky situation. You'll see how what's right can kind of evolve and why figuring this stuff out takes way more than a simple yes or no. Okay, let's unpack this. All right, let's kick things off with Robert. So, picture this. You got this brilliant, really ambitious student, but he comes from a low-income family. He's got his eyes on a top university, right? But there's this massive roadblock, a $500 college entrance exam prep class he just cannot afford. So what does he do? Well, maybe an act of desperation, he gets his hands on unauthorized answers for this prep class and uses them.
And one really interesting angle here is how something like Perplexity AI looks at this. It's not about saying he's wrong or he's right. It's more about, meticulously breaking down the whole scenario. It explores the arguments for one side, then the arguments for the other, trying to stay neutral. It really just encourages critical thinking, looking at all the pieces.
Right. And if you look at it just through that lens, maybe more from a systemic view, you can actually build a case that seems to justify what Robert did. Our sources point out that the $500, that's not just a fee, it's a real economic barrier. It gives wealthier students a serious, maybe unfair advantage.
Yeah, exactly. So Robert's action, it could be seen less like simple cheating and more like a desperate reaction to systemic inequality, almost like a form of resistance, maybe.
Possibly. And given he's described as brilliant and ambitious, you kind of think, well, doesn't he deserve every shot he can get?
Yeah.
So using the answers might seem like just a pragmatic shortcut in that light. Maybe the bigger ethical failure is the system itself, the one that puts a price tag on test prep.
There's even a sort of contextual no-harm argument floating around in some analyses. If it's only for the prep class, the real exam, some might see the harm as, less significant.
But then you flip the coin, right, and you look at academic integrity.
Exactly. And those arguments are powerful. Using unauthorized answers, regardless of the why, it just fundamentally undermines academic integrity. It's cheating. It devalues the hard work everyone else put in, creates an unfair advantage, and, it chips away at the whole idea of meritocracy.
And there's the risk to Robert himself,
Yeah.
his character, his reputation. I mean, if this gets discovered, the consequences could be severe, long-lasting even.
Right. Ethical behavior, fundamentally, it demands honesty, even when things are tough. And our sources really hammer this point, the slippery slope. You start with prep answers, maybe it gets easier to justify cheating on the actual exam or other things later on.
That slippery slope idea is definitely a key nuance here. The sources do distinguish between prep answers and answers for the actual exam. It's still unethical, sure, but maybe distinct. Though, yeah, it potentially opens that door.
And the whole dilemma, it really highlights the need for bigger changes, doesn't it? Systemic reforms to tackle educational inequality, like maybe subsidized prep or changing admissions criteria altogether.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But despite all those mitigating factors, the overwhelming academic view, according to our sources, remains pretty clear. Using answers you didn't earn is unethical. It hits all those core principles: honesty, fairness, trust, respect, responsibility. Everything education is supposed to be built on.
And that brings up another tricky point. Does Robert have an obligation to report others who might be involved in getting these answers? Academically speaking, institutions usually encourage reporting dishonesty to keep things fair.
Yeah, but realistically, our sources show students are often really hesitant. There's fear of backlash, peer pressure. It's complicated.
And for Robert specifically, reporting would almost certainly mean he'd have to confess his own part in it, which adds this huge layer of personal risk.
Okay, so that's the sort of abstract what should he do phase. But let's shift gears. What happens when it's not a potential choice anymore? What if Robert has already taken the exam, used those answers, and passed? It's a done deal.
Ah, yes. That changes the whole ethical conversation, doesn't it? It's not should I anymore, it's what now. the ethical weight just increases dramatically. He has gained an unfair advantage using false pretenses. That's a fact now.
And the potential consequences become much more concrete and, frankly, scary.
Absolutely, if discovered. Exam invalidation, admission, offers rescinded, suspension, maybe even expulsion. Serious stuff. His moral responsibility now includes, well, owning up to it somehow, trying to fix it, or just living with that constant risk of discovery hanging over him.
That shift from choice to consequence is huge. But our sources push us even further. They ask us to imagine, what if Robert isn't just some case study? What if Robert is your son?
And that is where, as our sources really illuminate, it becomes profoundly personal. It's suddenly
It's
not abstract anymore. It's emotional. It's visceral.
Oh, absolutely. As a parent, your first instinct, that protective instinct, it just kicks in full force, doesn't it? You want to shield him from harm. You feel this deep empathy for his struggles, the financial pressure he was under, and maybe that softens your judgment quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. And you're caught in this really difficult bind. On one hand, you want to teach strong moral values, right? Honesty, integrity. But on the other, there's this powerful impulse for unconditional support to protect your child.
Yeah, and suddenly you're way more motivated to find legitimate alternatives for him, scholarships, free programs, anything, rather than just accepting what he did.
Exactly. The focus shifts. It becomes about his long-term character. How does he navigate this? What does this teach him about resilience, honesty, responsibility? It moves way beyond an academic problem. It's deeply human, affecting the core of your relationship.
Okay, let's completely shift gears now. New dilemma. Imagine this. You've got an old friend, Fred. He's married to Carol, seems happy, but you find out, maybe accidentally, maybe through confidence, that Fred is cheating on Carol.
Okay, so the immediate question is, well, do you confront Fred? Do you tell him, arguments for telling him often center on, honesty in your own friendship, accountability, maybe preventing Carol from being hurt even more later, trying to nudge Fred towards doing the right thing.
But the arguments against are strong too, right? You could wreck your friendship with Fred. Permanently.
Definitely. You could trigger huge conflict in their marriage, cause a lot of pain, and some people would argue it's their private life. It's not your place to interfere.
So what do the sources suggest here? What's the recommended approach?
Generally, experts recommend talking to Fred directly first. A private, respectful conversation. Express your concern, encourage him to think about it, maybe confess to Carol himself, or perhaps seek counseling.
Okay, so that respects the friendship, gives Fred a chance to take responsibility.
Exactly. It allows him accountability without you immediately blowing things up, so to speak.
But that leads to the next, maybe even trickier question. Should Carol be told, separately from whether you talk to Fred?
Yeah, that's a whole other layer. And the general advice we found from relationship experts, in most situations, the answer tends to be yes, Carol should be told.
And the thinking behind that is?
It really comes down to respecting her right to know the truth about her own marriage, about her life. Keeping it secret can often lead to much deeper betrayal and hurt if or maybe when she finds out later.
Right. And sometimes that painful truth, it's the necessary first step if there's any chance of healing or rebuilding the marriage.
But how it's done is critical. Timing, setting it should be private, calm, and ideally, the person who cheated needs to be ready to be honest.
And there's a huge caveat, isn't there?
Absolutely crucial exception. If telling Carol could put anyone, her, Fred, even you, at risk of physical harm, safety always comes first in those cases.
Okay, now let's wrap up the stakes again. Same scenario, Fred and Carol. But now imagine they're expecting a baby.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that dramatically heightens everything. A baby. That signifies such a deep commitment to building a stable, trusting family unit together.
So the secrecy around the cheating, it becomes even more damaging, doesn't it? It's not just their relationship on the line now.
Exactly. It's the future family environment, the child's well-being. Suddenly, everything feels much more fragile, much more consequential.
It seems like there's this urgent need for transparency, for dealing with this before the baby arrives.
Absolutely. Counseling seems almost essential at that point, not just advisable. And think about Carol's emotional health during the pregnancy, the stress, the potential devastation if she finds out later. It could be catastrophic for her, for the baby, for everyone.
Okay, final escalation. The ultimate personal stake. Let's say Carol isn't just your friend's wife. What if Carol is your daughter?
Oh, right. That just changes the game entirely, doesn't it? It goes from abstract or arm's length ethical problem to something profoundly personal, deeply emotional.
Yeah. Your primary instinct becomes fiercely protective, right?
Yeah.
You want to shield your daughter, protect her emotional well-being, her future, especially now during pregnancy.
hmm And that feeling of responsibility, it intensifies. You feel this much stronger compulsion to act, to intervene somehow. You're trying to balance being honest with keeping her trust, ensuring her emotional security during a really vulnerable time.
So that private chat with Fred, urging him to confess,
Yeah.
it's probably still the first step.
Likely, yes, but your loyalty, your primary allegiance, is now clearly to your daughter. So if Fred seems unwilling to be honest or change his behavior, the ethical justification for telling your daughter yourself, and maybe sooner rather than later, becomes much stronger.
Especially with the pregnancy, adding that extra layer of complexity. The stress is a real concern for her health, the baby's development.
Precisely. Promoting a stable, honest environment becomes the absolute priority. Your role shifts dramatically. You're not just an observer anymore. You become this active guardian, trying to guide her through an incredibly difficult truth while still supporting her choices, her autonomy. It's an immense weight.
What's so fascinating looking across all these scenarios from our sources is just how dramatically that ethical calculus shifts.
Mm.
Every layer of personal connection, just imagining yourself in the situation, thinking about a friend, and then especially a family member like your child.
Yeah.
It changes everything. Easy answers just seem to evaporate.
Yeah, they really do. So what's the takeaway here for you, the listener? We've seen how dilemmas that look similar on the surface can have completely different ethical weights, depending on the context, the people involved, the relationships. It's a really powerful reminder that right and wrong aren't always these neat black and white categories. Often it really comes down to empathy, foresight, understanding the ripple effects. And that leaves us with a pretty compelling question to ponder, doesn't it? What ethical blind spots might you have in your own life? How might shifting your perspective, like really trying to imagine yourself or someone you love deeply, in a similar tough spot, how might that illuminate those blind spots? How can we bring that same kind of deep inquiry to our everyday choices, really recognizing the often subtle but significant impact our decisions have on ourselves and definitely on the people around us?